Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for July 19th, 2022. Denise, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, Ms. DiPolito,
Present.
Mr. Gio,
Here.
Mr. Lansky,
Present.
Mr. Newman,
Here.
Mr. Padavani.
Here.
Thank you.
I'll ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of a late start. This is our first, our meeting back in the townhouse. Meetings are now hybrid, so we will have some people on the Zoom and those of us present here at the townhouse. First item on the agenda is that of Bambina Myers. This is an application to renew a special exception use permit for an existing accessory apartment on the first floor of a one-family dwelling in an R40 district at 5 St. Leonard Avenue. The applicant is on Zoom, correct?
Yes. Hi.
Just state your name and address for the record.
Bambina Myers, 5 St. Leonard Avenue, Granite Springs, New York, 10527.
Great. And then could you just describe to us your application?
Yes, I applied to renew my, the ability to have our home be a 2-family home in case I decide to, to rent the accessory apartment.
Okay. So it's not currently occupied?
No, at this time, my mom was living there, and currently there is no one living here or in that apartment. But I just wanted to keep up with, with the original.
And Tom, have you been out to that apartment?
I have.
And everything is up to code?
It is.
Any other questions? Any questions from the board of the applicant?
Should I still keep asking my question? When was the last time the septic was pumped out?
It's all on record, Vic. Arnie, we cannot take an application anymore unless they submit that and it is valid.
Right, well, it's just a standing thing I've been doing.
Yeah, no, it's been cleaned within the last 5 years. I
Okay.
can't tell you when at the moment, but it has been.
All right, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
In the hybrid meeting model, we can still, there's public comment is still available via Zoom or phone as well? Is that correct?
It's available via a phone call. The only
Okay.
people that are on with me now are applicants. I do have a young man, Robert Moore, who was a resident of the town, who is interning in the supervisor's office. And he's been joining some of our meetings, and he is here with us this evening just to observe.
Okay. So we're going to just go out for public comment. If there's anyone here or anyone online, Paul, if you want to put up the phone numbers that wishes to speak with regard to this application. Just give a minute for Paul to tell me if he's got anybody coming through. Okay. Anything else from the applicant?
No, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion for type of action?
I'll make a motion type 2.
I need a second.
I need a second.
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion as to the application?
I'll make a motion to accept the application as presented to the board for the next 7 years.
Second,
A second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Paul.
Paul, thank you. Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani,
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, so your application has been approved. You'll just need to renew it in another 7 years.
Yep, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'll be in touch, Bina, via email.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, next item on the agenda is that of Zion, California. It's an application to renew a special exception use permit for 2 existing accessory apartments on the second floor of an existing detached garage to an existing one-family dwelling in the R80 district at 218 Mayapack Avenue, Yorktown Heights. Who do we have to speak for this application?
Joshua Zion speaking.
And your address for the record?
220 Mayapack Avenue, Yorktown Heights, New York.
Okay, could you describe your application to us?
Just a renewal of the use permit every 7 years.
Okay. And there are some conditions, I guess, historically that have been put on this. This is specifically for caretakers of this property.
Not specifically for just a caretaker. The zoning board approved back in 1966 that these 2 apartments can only be used for workers. That would include a caretaker and family members.
Denise, I'm looking at the 1966 resolution. And I think it was for 1 apartment then, if I'm not mistaken. Am I mistaken? And then there's an 87 where the second one was brought online.
You are correct. I apologize. Yes, 66, it was for 1, then a second one was added in 87.
And the 66 doesn't use the word special exception use permit. It just says a permit. And probably the code was different back then. And then the 87, they granted a variance for the second one. So if I assume we're here tonight to renew the permit from 1966, which specifically says caretaker.
No,
No?
we're here to renew the last. They were here in 2015 to renew the special exception use permit for the 2 existing apartments over the garage. They've had to renew it every 7 years since 1987. And they have.
Okay. The 66 is specifically for caretaker. And then the 87, I don't see the same language. Is it so? But hold on. Oh no, the 87 says caretaker too.
Are the apartments currently occupied?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Only by family.
Family.
The 87 says the apartment will be used strictly for an additional caretaker to help with the maintenance of this unique property. I don't know if that was changed over the years or if that's what we're renewing.
So it was changed. That's why we're renewing the last application from 2015, which states that it's 2 caretaker apartments to be used by employees, workers, or family only. If you go through their file at some point, this property has 2 cottages and 2 apartments. The cottages were grandfathered in, and then at some point, they made the cottages for caretakers only, and they allowed the apartment to be used by other workers and the family. This is a huge piece of property with many, many outbuildings.
And just for context, is this, if the applicant could describe the property, is it a working farm? Is it?
No, it's a family compound.
Okay.
And there's no commercial farming going on.
And does it predate the cottages? Do they predate the code?
Yes,
Okay. That changes things for me, so
yep.
I don't have that. All right,
Okay.
Yeah, this is a property that's been in the Zion family for a terrific amount of years. And Josh and his siblings are now the next generation that, live there, not even a lot, just kind of come and visit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, the reason we have a lot of questions, generally the code allows for one accessory apartment. This is a unique property that dates back quite a ways. But that's why we're asking some of these extra questions. We just want to get comfortable with the two accessory apartments, which is not a standard thing. So the condition and the last renewal allowed for caretakers, workers, and family members, but excluded a tenant. So it's not to be leased. Is that correct? Is my understanding of that correct?
Correct.
Did any of the board members have an issue with adding family member to?
no issue.
No, I do not.
No.
Okay. Tom, have you looked at the property?
I have.
Everything's in order?
It is.
Has it proper fire escapes?
It meets the code at the time it was constructed. So whatever the code required for emergency egress at that time is what's been maintained.
It has been maintained.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I do not.
Is there anyone that wishes to make a public comment regarding this application?
Yep.
You can come up to the podium here. And just give us your name and address for the record.
Marilyn Glotzer, 231 Mayapack Avenue. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Yucatels and the Zions before them. They've kept that property beautiful these years. When the house burned down, we were there trying to help out, but they were very self-sufficient. And we have found, being neighbors across the street, 40, 45, 46 years, they've kept it in a beautiful condition. We felt bad that that house burnt during Christmas time a few years ago. As I said, we rushed over with clothes or whatever, but they were fine. They came back to thank us. It's been a lovely neighborhood, and we thank them for keeping it the neighborhood that we moved into 45 years ago.
Thank you
Nice
for
to
your
hear.
comment.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak to this application? Paul, anyone calling in? Okay. Are we comfortable with the special exception use
Yeah.
permit?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the applicant?
No other comments, and thank you for the kind words.
Okay. Can I have a motion as the type of action?
I'll make a motion type 2.
A second?
I second.
Thank you, Paul. Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion as to the application?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. And if you, I'm happy to read one. Whereas a permit was issued for a caretaking apartment in 1966, and a variance for a second accessory apartment was granted in 1987, and the two apartments existed before code and have been continuously renewed since 1987. We resolved to grant 2 special exception use permits to be used exclusively for caretakers and family members at 218 Mayapack Avenue, Yorktown Heights.
Second,
Thank you, Bart.
Yes?
I cannot write that fast. Can you email that to me, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So Bart and Arnie, Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations. Your permit's been granted. And we'll see you in 7 years.
Okay, see you. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Zion, I'll be in touch with all of you via email.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Claudia Coelho. This is an application for a variance for a side yard setback for an addition to an existing one-family dwelling in an R10 residential district at 10 Shamrock Drive. Is there someone here to represent the applicant?
Yes, hi, that's me.
Just state your name and address for the record.
Sure, my name is Claudia Coelho, 10 Shamrock Drive, Yorktown Heights.
Okay, could you describe your application for us?
Sure, so I am applying for an addition to my existing home. I want to go towards the back of the property because I want to continue having 2 bedrooms, but make them bigger. And I intend to do that by continuing on the same line that my house is, but towards the back.
Okay, and so this is an application for a 5-foot front yard setback variance. And this is the only thing that is extending from the existing house is the covered porch. Is that correct? Ms. Coelho,
That's it.
I'm sorry, what that was from me. Mhm.
Yeah, it's a
Can you-
different application.
what do I have the wrong one in front of me? I'm sorry.
It's okay. 10 Shamrock Drive.
Okay, so this one, is there a road? There's a road on the plans called
That's spring.
West Spring. Is that an actual road or is that just a paper road?
It's a paper road.
Paper road?
Mhm.
Okay, so this addition, it took me a little while looking at this to get oriented in terms of where this addition was going. This addition is going essentially toward the back of the property, correct?
Yes,
Okay, but the variance is for the side yard.
Right.
So the existing house, the addition is not going to be any closer to that side yard line than the existing house already is. Is that correct?
correct. So I'm just continuing the line.
Okay, right. You see that, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Tommy, do you agree with that? Is that,
Yeah, it's actually less than the front corner of the house is closer to the property line as it exists
right?
Right.
than the nearest part of the proposed addition.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and it tapers farther back. So at the front corner, it's only 5 feet away of the existing house, then it's 8.66. And then by the end of the rear addition, it's 10.5 feet away. So it continues to taper farther away. And they kept the lines. So I don't have an issue with it.
Okay.
No, neither do I.
Have you spoken with any of your neighbors about the addition or had any feedback?
Yes, it's a very friendly neighborhood, so none of them have any issues with it.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I do not.
No.
No.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this application? or online or on the phone? Nothing there, Paul? Okay. Okay. Is there anything else from the applicant that you'd like to add?
No, not really. I mean, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, but not to add.
Okay. No other questions from the board?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I'll ask for a motion for the type of action.
Make a motion type 2.
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
And does anyone have a motion with regard to the application?
I'll make the motion to accept the application as presented to the board.
I second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations. Your variance has been approved.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay. Next item is that of William and Kelly Smith. This is an application for a variance for a front yard setback for a front porch addition to an existing one-family dwelling in an R10 residential district at 22 Crossway. Someone here to represent the applicant?
Yeah.
Come on up, just give us your, to the podium. Just give us your name and address for the record.
William and Kelly Smith, 22 Crossway, Curtis, New York.
Great. Could you just describe your application for us?
Yes, we are proposing to put a front porch on our house.
And is it, is just the front porch?
It's part of a larger renovation.
Okay. So you're adding the second story
Yes,
and with that, the porch?
yes,
Okay. And on the first floor plan, what's noted here as office, that's an existing part of the house?
yes,
Okay, so the only thing that's moving forward is the porch,
that's correct.
The front porch would then be flush with the existing part.
right? So again, this is no closer than the existing house, existing footprint of the house.
Where's the sewer? Is there
We have
a bigger survey or just this?
just this.
I can't. I could have read it 10 years ago. But, so what is how far back are we from the front?
So the current house is 20 feet back, but the bump out that's pre-existing is only 20 feet set back from the road. So we're requesting a variance to add a front porch that would bring it flush with the pre-existing. So we would only have 20 feet setback from the road. We'd be adding about 5 feet of a porch to the front,
And what's the required setback, 30 feet?
25.
Oh, the required is 25.
Yeah.
So you're asking for a 5-yard variance.
5 foot variance.
foot.
5 foot, yeah, sorry.
And the existing house
Is already within
requires
that, yeah.
that.
And that 5 feet makes it equidistant with the current office.
Correct.
Thank you.
have the original survey. Or copy of it if you want to look bigger.
No, I got it.
Mhm.
And I walk by your house. I live in Purdy's.
Okay.
So my wife, I do, but I go by your house regularly.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
I do not.
No.
No.
Okay, is there anyone else here that would like to speak with regard to this application? We'll put up the phone numbers as well. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Tinukat Kolpa, the neighbor, 24 Crossway. So just in case you're going to say, no, we agree completely. Wonderful neighbors. We've known them for what, 20 years now. So their house is beautifully kept and it would just make the neighborhood more beautiful, actually.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't, I get used to nobody wanting to talk, so I just sort of.
I was hoping somebody's going to ask if we talk to our neighbors. Brought them with us.
I would say that many of the houses, both on Crossway and within the neighborhood, are closer to the street. And so this certainly won't change the dynamic of the street or the view down the street by having this being within 5 feet. So.
Nobody else, Paul?
I have somebody, Tom, an email. Dear board members, thank you for the notice of request for a variance in our neighborhood. We are writing in support of the application of William and Kelly Smith for an area variance at 22 Crossway and Purdy's. Their proposed work will increase the value of their home, which in turn increases value in our neighborhood. We also expect their work to beautify their property, which will also improve the aesthetic of our small block. We ask that you approve their request so this work may be completed. Thank you, Karen Horowitz and David Wagenheim, I'm sorry, 18 Crossway Purdy's.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Okay. If no other questions from the board, can I have a motion for the type of action?
I'll make a motion type 2.
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion as to the application?
I'll make a motion to accept the application as presented to the board.
A second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, your application's approved.
Thank you.
If I could, I'd just like to say thank you to Denise Shermer for all her assistance in this variance process. And also thank you to Tommy for taking the time to meet with me and help me through this process. They made it very easy and made it comfortable for us to come by ourselves without needing to spend money on an attorney or anything. So I'd just like to acknowledge the assistance that they've given to us, and we're very thankful for that.
Thank you for your comment.
It's very nice. to meet
You're
town-
very,
town
you're
works-
very welcome.
Town residents.
Well, they've been fantastic. So.
Great. It's very nice to hear. Thank you for your comments to the town employees.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay. Item number 5 is that of Donald Kaposha and Tommy Peggs.
Pegus.
I'm sorry, Denise, say again.
Pegus.
Pegas. An application for a variance for less than the required frontage for an existing one-family dwelling in an R80 residential district at 78 Mosman Avenue. Do we have someone to represent the applicant?
Hi, my name is Ryan Conley. I'm an architect at Thomas Hyphen Partners. I'm here to represent the applicants.
Okay. Could you do, so we have two separate agenda items here. So we'll just, we'll start with the variance for the frontage at 78 Mosman. That's for the primary residence.
Mhm.
Can you just
Sure
describe
thing.
that to us?
Sure. Absolutely. So in going through this process with Denise and with Mr. Tuma, been extremely helpful. And it's been interesting to find that the original residence, which I believe was built in 1957, when permitted, was permitted with too small of a street frontage. So I believe the code requirement for an R80 district is 200 feet. I believe we're at 93 or 95 feet. And so we're simply trying to grandfather in this, the existing residence and have that be approved. So it's not an issue going forward.
Okay. And is there a process? So is this in order to get is there a CO on this house?
There is not.
Okay. So this is part of the process to get a CO?
Yes.
Okay.
The house is from 1967 and there's no CO?
It was recently purchased, right? Or
I don't
The
understand.
applicant can
Is it
answer that
predate?
question, but no, it doesn't predate. There was a permit issued for a one-family dwelling in 1957 that remains open today. I've had older ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite surprising to us as well.
when was the property purchased by your client?
It was purchased several years ago. And I think,
title didn't
I'm
pick
not
that
sure if
up?
they were aware of that or not. Yeah. I'm not
That's-
sure.
That'd be unusual for title not to pick that up. That's confusing.
Because I will say that the previous owner built it himself.
Mhm.
So, but the lot, I think we got an opinion, that the lot as approved. We need a variance for this? Because I didn't think we needed a variance if the lot was approved and there's no change in the lot. Right? So are you asking for a variance for the lot?
Yeah, we're asking for a variance to approve. This is how we have understood it in working with the town, is that we need to get this approved. So, and able to be able to get the C of O on all these kind of open items.
The property was zoned R80 in 1957 when the permit was issued. I went through the planning department to see if there was some reduction in road frontage granted by the planning board at the time and couldn't find anything.
Oh, so is it possible that this was not an approved lot?
It's possible that something was overlooked at the time of permit issuance.
So did this go to planning board?
No,
So how did it not go to, I'm confused, sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly there've been a number of things missed here along the way. We've got a
There was
building
no-
permit.
There was no survey on file until the applicant here provided me with a survey in order to make the determination of the frontage and the lot area, et cetera, setbacks.
But there was a building permit that was never closed,
There
and
was a building-
therefore a CO was never issued.
Correct.
And was a planning board application required at the time?
I don't believe so. I don't know if the environmental study was in the hands of the building inspector, zoning officer, or if there was a separate engineering department at the time, which, did the environmental
Was this part of a
determination.
subdivision?
It was not that I could locate, no.
Because if I remember right, way back when I was a kid there used to be a hunt club back there. And the parcel that the applicant bought from Lights, that was the main housing of the club. And if I remember, or how I understood it to be, Parker's bought quite a bit of that property. And if I'm not mistaken, Bonnie Ellis bought quite a bit of it too for Twin Knolls, not Woodline.
So am I understanding the request is for a area variance for, and you have 75 feet of frontage and 200 feet is required?
Yeah.
Is that the first request?
Right, we have 94 feet and 200 is required.
94 feet and. But
Mhm. So it's, where's the frontage is here. So it's just got, it's like a flag.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual lot shape. So it's a very, very large lot, but it has a small access to the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So access to Mosman here.
I mean, just, we see 75 on the plan.
Well, yeah,
So whether it's 75 or 94.
Yeah, there's on the survey from point of beginning, you're going 60 degrees, 44 east, 75 feet. And then there's another little thing there. Is that also, you're also including that second piece there along Mosman Avenue to get to the 94?
Yes, correct. That's how we got to the total. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
So I guess my question is whether they were supposed to go to planning board. Does this have site plan approval?
I checked the planning department's records to see if there was a subdivision approved granting this single lot with that type of frontage. You know, approving that for development.
And you didn't find
I
it?
found no records.
So is there, how does it, if it's not part of a site plan, a subdivision, when do you have a right to build?
When you meet the criteria that the minimum criteria that's set forth in zoning for the district, which is 200 feet of frontage. Is it R80 or R40?
It's R80.
R80, 80,000 square feet. Board of Health approval, and you propose a dwelling with the minimum required setbacks.
So would they, if for a single lot like this, if they went to zoning, would they still need to go to planning
To build a house,
to build a house?
I would send them to planning for an environmental determination. Yeah, prior to issuing a building permit. But no, if the lot had 200 feet of frontage, had 80,000 square feet, and I got Board of Health approval, I could issue a building permit.
Is there Board of Health approval?
They don't have a final Board of Health approval. I believe there's a construction permit for an on-site wastewater treatment system, a septic system. It's not closed out.
I would think we would want to see Board of Health approval.
I'm gonna require that before I issue a CO for the existing dwelling.
Okay, this is just
Odd.
very unusual. What's can the applicant tell us a little bit more? Is there?
Well, I think what you just heard is all we've learned as well in this process. You know, and I think so the owner's ambitions are to close out these open items and to also you know, renovate the existing building. It's currently in need of some repairs, and I think to bring it you know, to renovate it and also to close out all these items, which, you know, I think we've also been discovering along the way as well, unfortunately.
So nobody is currently living on the property
No.
in the house? No. So I needs the variance in order to get the CO, needs the Board of Health approval in order to get the CO. In terms of what Bart is saying about, I mean, is it just a timing issue? Should we be?
Well, I don't.
What happened?
I don't know that Tommy's either going to refer him to planning or he's not. And I don't think it matters for us. You know, what matters for us is whether or not we're comfortable with the zoning variance. And for me, part of the thing is it's a substantial variance, right? But nobody wants to create hardship for somebody who's had a house or a purchaser who didn't know. But it's just unusual that someone wouldn't know. I've never, you know, seen a title report come in without a CO, which was after zoning, and it wasn't flagged by an attorney. You know, there's
Was
two
there a
attorneys
title
in there.
report?
It has to be.
What was that?
There is not always a title search done on
Not if it's
properties.
in all cash and no bank.
Frank
account.
Castro wouldn't need it.
A cash deal would not need it.
It wouldn't, but I've never seen one. And I've done 500 of them. I've never seen one without title, unless it's family to family. And it's, something, it's not for consideration.
So Bart, I've been working in the zoning department for 10 years. And I will tell you, I come across this a lot.
Wow.
People pay cash, searches are not done, and then they learn they have open permits. And although this case is much more unique, this isn't, we have a lot of people in town who built houses in the 40s and have no COs for their houses. So we're coming across this more and more in the older parts of town in particular, but I deal with this a lot, actually.
Okay. I mean, I believe that people come in and tell you that they didn't get title and they didn't know.
You're a good lawyer.
that I could understand why somebody would say that, I would, I get that advice. Nobody wants to say I got a great deal because there's no CO and help me. But that's neither here nor there. So
Does the applicant intend to make this property their residence?
It'll be maintained as a single family dwelling. I'm not sure if they'll be using it as their full-time residence, but it will be a single family dwelling still.
let's hear if there's public who want to say something.
Okay, any other questions from the board before I go to the public?
Not part of this application, but related, what is the intended purpose for the accessory building?
The accessory building, oh, sorry, is that to me or is that to?
Yes, to you.
It's a home occupation, so it's primarily an artist's studio and working space.
That would be open to the public as well?
No, it'd be really just for them to work in that space, not necessarily to have regular traffic or anything like that.
So, and just to be clear, so there's this is for the lot. This is a variance for the lot. When we get to the next agenda item, there will also be a variance requested because the same frontage applies to the accessory building as well. And granting this one doesn't necessarily give them the other one. So we'd be granting this again, or be voting again whether or not to grant a variance for the accessory building, because that would also not meet the frontage requirements.
And the accessory building is all for home occupation?
Yeah, it's also a separate application. The two applications are separate. This one is just for the frontage for the existing dwelling, so they can get a CO.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
That's for this. When did we say this was built? This home?
it was permitted in 1957, I believe.
Permanent, 57, okay.
Yeah, I understand that there's two applications. And the first application is for an area variance. And the second application is for this home occupation. Deal with them separately, but there is, a similar issue.
Could the applicant's representative just give us could you give us a bigger picture here? I mean, are there some other, I understand there's some other nearby parcels that the applicant owns. I think we're just kind of struggling to figure out what's going on with the property and what the intended use is.
Yeah, sure. I think as you mentioned, the applicant does own several adjacent properties as well. But I think it's just, honestly, they really enjoy being a part of this community and being part of this town. I think they enjoy, working, on site and having, space to, they're, one of them is an artist. I think they really care about this land. They have, apple trees on this property. They've got a lot, I think, invest in the property and as being members of the community. So I think, it's really to have this larger artist studio as the accessory building. But they also want to restore the single family dwelling just as a passion project. Honestly, I think they really care about the property and they want to see it restored to its kind of original glory.
Did you say adjacent properties?
So the owner of this property does own several adjacent properties as well.
So adjacent meaning
Adjoining, bro.
adjoining.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Some of the codes and some of the towns, and I haven't looked at ours, say that if there are adjacent properties with common ownership, sometimes for site plan purpose or for other purposes, they're considered to be joined. Could this issue be resolved by, do they have more road frontage on an adjacent property?
Bart, that would open up a whole different question about tax treatment of these parcels, and I don't think they want to go that route.
I just curious, because it doesn't necessarily from a planning and zoning perspective affect tax. You can treat parcels as one on an application even when they're separate parcels. It's very common for instance, for parking and other things on a planning board application. So I'm just curious if there are adjacent properties here which could resolve this in any way.
Okay, to answer that question, I'm pretty well familiar with the area. To start off with, the applicant has been in front of us, if I may, because I know the area. Okay. The applicant has purchased a parcel.
Yeah.
Previous owner was Lights. Okay, where they put in the tennis court, and they were very cooperative with the immediate neighbor about their lights and stuff. I have to say they have done a fabulous job about working with the neighbors down there and keeping the property immaculate. Now, regarding, I'm sorry, again, if I'm stepping on your toes.
No, please do. Thank you.
All right. There's only one other place they can put the driveway. And that was on the existing driveway.
But the
in my personal opinion, that would be a very hazardous driveway for additional traffic.
But the driveway's there.
Line of sight.
Driveway's there. The only question is the road frontage. And if he has more road frontage, then he can resolve that.
But the thing of it is, the building's already pre-existing.
Yeah, the building's existing, the driveway's existing. But if it was never permitted, it's not really the same thing. If it was never approved, it's a kind of a different animal, isn't it?
Now, listen, I'm not.
And if he owns the property right next door, I'd like to just know.
There's one in between.
There's nothing in
Okay.
between. You can't do
All
it.
right, so that's good information. Thank you.
Right.
That's the 80.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no,
Continuous frontage. But again, I don't think that's not what they're asking us.
I understand. Okay.
So essentially we're trying to get a CO for the house, get Board of Health approval, get everything that's required, close the permit, get this property up to code, up to snuff. So they would have to get this variance to do that. Forget about the next part of the application. We could talk about that separately.
Right.
This property should be.
I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
right. It shouldn't have happened this way.
And something doesn't feel right. But that's okay. I'm ready to proceed.
Okay. I mean, do you feel there's some other way to remedy it other than to get the CO and get the variances?
We don't have to remedy it. I mean, there's a question of whether or not it's a substantial variance and whether or not we want to set a precedent and whether the board feels comfortable. I think given the fact that this has been there for 70 years and if we don't have a lot of complaints on record and nobody showed up in those 70 years and said this is egregious, it's probably okay to let it lay, in my opinion. I just, you know.
If I may ask or request, does the town board, I mean, the zoning board like to do a site walk on it to put everyone else's mind at ease?
Well, it's pretty clear what it is.
You know, I'm just making a suggestion regarding that.
All right, why don't we, let's see if there's any public comment on this one, and then I might have a suggestion. I wonder if we could hear the next item, which might give us a little more information and background and comfort level before we vote on this one. But I'll raise that after. So let's go out to the public. Is there anyone here that wishes to comment on this application? Okay. We have phone numbers up. You have anybody, Paul? Okay, nobody there. So if I could just, Paul or Melissa, do you have any feelings on this?
No,
I'm familiar with the area, so it's, I mean, obviously, because it's been there for 70 years, like Bart said, it's a different situation.
Okay. How does the board feel about delaying a vote on this until we hear the second part of the application on the same property? Would that be, Denise, would that be appropriate?
I looked to Tommy for advice on this, but I don't think, I think you have to treat each one as it is.
Right.
And to go to the next application and then let that determine whether or not, I think they're two separate animals. And I think that in fairness to these people, to get a CO on their house, they could withdraw the next application and then, what are you going to do? I think you have to vote on this and then move on to the next application as a brand new application, which it is.
Right. So if we go to a vote here, let's just say, and the variance was not granted, what would happen with that property, Tom?
I would think that the applicant would go to a higher level to seek a some kind of.
Well, they could appeal our decision.
To this, yeah.
Right.
I got another question for you, Tom. You're required to build to the code for the time that you take out your permit,
Yes,
right? So this was built in what year again?
57.
57. So we had a code in 57.
I have the old code book that came out of the basement of this building. That's how.
So we have the code.
I did my due diligence in
So
looking into whether this variance was required or not.
So we know what code this was supposed to be built to, but then all of a sudden that building permit expires after a period of 1 or 2 years.
1 year.
1 year,
Mhm.
and if the permit's not renewed and the house isn't
The
finished.
permit was renewed before they made application to this board by the current.
Okay,
owner.
so, but are they still building to 1957 code? Or is it now based upon the permit renewal? Because
They
it was,
are building to 1957 code.
okay, the initial permit grandfathers you in, is what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yep,
Okay.
that house has to comply with the code at the time of permit issuance, which is 1957.
Okay.
And what
and it
was the
doesn't
setback
matter-
then?
Excuse me?
And what was the setback at that time?
But
That's
that's a
talking about-
zoning issue, not a code.
Yeah,
issue.
it was 200
Oh.
feet. The frontage was 200 feet,
But my question was,
the building code.
building code,
Mhm.
it doesn't, even if the permit expires and they don't finish, it doesn't matter. They took out their permit in 57. We're looking at 1957.
Yes.
Okay, and fair enough. That was my question. Thank you.
Which is unfortunate.
Well, no,
You'd rather have it built to current code.
well,
Or
as long-
renovated to current
I don't,
code.
as long as everyone's consistent, I'm happy.
The applicant mentioned doing some work to the house, so depending on the extent of that work may kick in some current code requirements. I haven't seen what they're proposing to do yet.
Okay,
Yeah, once you renovate 75%, you gotta hit current code as an example.
okay,
But as long as it's consistent and I know what the interpretation is, I'm fine, I'm happy. And
okay.
I'm prepared to 70 years, we don't have anyone complaining. I'm okay with proceeding.
Okay. Paul, we said you had nobody on the phone, right? Okay. Any other comments from the board
No.
or the applicant?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, so again, we're just going to vote on item number 5, which is the application for the variance for less than the required frontage. 94, they have 94 and they need 200 at 78 Mosman Avenue. We're just voting on that for now. So if I could have a motion for the type of action.
I'll make a motion type 2.
I'll second.
Sorry, Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and can we have a motion as to the application?
Art, you,
Yeah, I'm just reading what the application says, so I don't say.
All right, yeah, give us 1 minute and we'll get,
Yeah.
just so we get the right language.
So the application I have here has. Okay, so this is the other, there's 2 of them.
Correct.
Let me just make sure I have the right one. So I would rather say, this says an application for a variance for less than the required frontage. I'd rather say,
The second page, you can find the exact.
yeah. An application for a variance of 106 feet,
106.02.
106.02 feet. Where 200 feet is required. Anyone else have any additions or changes to that?
no, I second.
Okay, so then on
You want to just do, why don't you just do that one more time?
sure. I propose that the ZBA resolve that the application of Donald Capocia and Tommy Pegas for 78 Mosman Avenue be granted insofar as a variance of 106.2 feet of road frontage is granted.
Ms. DiPolito,
And this is just to enable the property to obtain a CO?
Yes.
Well, it's no, once a variance is granted, it's granted. I mean, you know, frankly, they have another property here that has more than enough frontage and they could do something with it, but that's complicated. And this has been around a long time, so.
Yeah, this is bringing this property, this lot. It's a variance for this existing lot and this existing home to exist as it is.
And it's gonna be with the property forever. So though it's
It is a 7-acre property, by the way.
Right.
Right.
which makes it boring.
I'll vote aye.
thank you. Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Mr. Padavani.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're moving to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the same applicant. This is an application for an accessory building, and there's actually 4 variances. One is a variance for less than the required frontage, which is similar to the issue that we just discussed, except this is in reference to building an accessory building. A variance for the proposed accessory building to be 2 stories. A variance for the height of the proposed accessory building. And a variance as the accessory use was determined to not be incidental to the principal use in the one-family dwelling in an R80 residential district. Wow. So we'll try to tackle these systematically, but first, if we could just get the applicant to describe this to us. We do have a set of plans that we've reviewed, but if you could just give us a description of the project and the variances that you want.
Sure, absolutely. So I think you described it well. I think, there's the lot issue, which we just talked about for the primary dwelling. Then there's a request for variance of an additional 1/2 story. 1.5 stories are permitted. We like to have 2 stories, and then to have a maximum height of 30 feet for a flat roof structure, which is similar to the permitted height for a primary dwelling in an R80 district. I think the height variances are really coming from the fact that the site has a relatively steep slope from south to north. And so the building is really situated right on the edge of the hill. And so it's kind of coming, in a sense, out of the hillside. I think that's where these height variances are really necessary for us to get kind of a fully usable building, a building that kind of maximizes its potential on the site. As we were looking at in the previous application, it's a relatively large site. It's set back from the road. It's secluded. So the building, it's not necessarily very visible from the neighboring properties. It probably won't be visible at all from from Mosman Avenue. And so, yeah, as I mentioned before, it's a home occupation. So it has space for a working studio and art display. One of the owners is an artist. As well as some, accessory spaces, relative to that use. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
How tall is the building?
So the building has a maximum height of 30 feet relative to the average adjacent grade.
And the square footage of the building?
So the square footage of the building overall is 6,700 feet.
That's the footprint, or
that's the total area, including the basement. The footprint is 5,340 feet, which is below the maximum lot coverage permitted by code. And so the variance that's being requested, that the accessory building is not incidental to the primary building, is really about the footprint size, as I understand it from talking with Mr. Tuma, that the building, just through the fact of having a larger footprint than the principal building, requires a variance.
Okay. So Tom, could you explain to us your determination as to the use?
The applicant, when I met with the applicant, the way it was described to me, we came up with agreeing that it would be a home occupation.
Okay.
So a home occupation is required to be incidental to the primary use, which is residential. So I think he's asking for a variance from the word incidental. And I think Tommy is saying that because the square footage is larger than the existing house, it doesn't qualify as incidental. Is that fair? Have we ever, to your knowledge, granted an application to make a home occupation not incidental to the home?
I am not aware of such.
Denise, have we, in your tenure, has this board ever granted a variance from the word incidental?
No.
So we're in new territory tonight. It's an interesting looking building, I'll say that.
Yeah, so, and quite large.
And the definition of incidental being based on square footage, that's just from time immemorial, or is there somewhere that we've seen that in the code?
I've seen it. It talks about subordinate.
Okay.
And then I researched definitions in the dictionary for incidental,
subordinate.
subordinate, and it seems to me it talks to the size. It should be smaller than the principal dwelling footprint.
It makes sense to me. But, thank you.
And so what did you, in designing this building, were there attempts made to perhaps make it one story so that it would comply with code?
Well, I think to be clear that the building actually, that request is a very small request in the sense that the basement level barely is qualifying as a story now. I think it's only maybe 1 foot higher than would be permitted to just have to be counted as a basement. So I think we're hoping that in requesting this now, it would give us the most flexibility as we finalize the design. But I think it may also be possible to make it work just with a single story. But I think we're optimistic that just by having that additional foot or two in the base level, we're able to get a window in there and make that more of a usable space than just a basement.
So this has, if I can just, it's easier since I have the full page in front of me. The basement says hammam. What is that? It's not a word I've heard before.
It's like a sauna.
Okay. So that's like how big is that? Like a 20-foot sauna? If my eye is right. And then there's a gym, and you said the basement's only about 1,000 square feet. The scale wise, it looks like it's half of the size of the floor above.
Oh, no, I didn't say 1,000 square feet. I said the height is only a few feet
Okay.
taller than it would be permitted to be.
How big is
The
the
basement area is 2,600 square feet.
And then how big is the main floor?
Main floor is 4,000 square feet.
Okay, so on the main floor, it says pottery studio, kitchen, powder room, foyer, dining, living, terrace. That sounds like an apartment to me. What am I missing? The dining, living, kitchen, doesn't that sound like an apartment?
Or at least a guest house.
How is that a home occupation?
Well, I think, they have events. They also are, as part of their art practice, there are many charity works, without going into the business of the owner. I think that they, host, they have people over to look at their art, part of their charities. So there's no one will be living in this. Absolutely. It's really more of a catering kitchen, let's say, with this home occupation use.
So the home occupation portion is a pottery studio, which appears to be about 20 feet long, looking at this thing. And then the remainder of the things are, seems like they're residential uses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, especially with the dining room.
Right? Can you explain why this does herring to me?
Yeah, I guess I mean, in a sense, there's no bedrooms though. There's no one would ever be staying or living in this. It's really a space for, having guests, having people that are involved with their charities, involved with their art foundations, over to entertain, to show the art, to view the art. So it's really a space that's used as part of this larger occupation they have as members of the community, and not a dwelling. No one will ever be living here, and no one's sleeping here. Many of these things are just, to use as part of that. Yeah.
Can you define what the home occupation is?
So they both produce art, and they are both members of charities which have significant investments, in the arts and community art foundations. And so I think it's for both of their
So
their use.
Are you saying philanthropy and artistic endeavors that's the home occupation?
Yes, that'd be correct.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that they're using 600 of the 6,000 square feet to show their art?
Well, I think the intention with the whole main levels, that would be for art display. So the foyer, the space all the way through the living room. So it's laid out in these plans, like, in these uses, but I think there'd be art all over the place. Could be rearranged in different ways. So I apologize. It's maybe somewhat misleading.
I'm just going to read the section of the definition from the code, home occupation. Any use customarily conducted in the office or studio of a physician, surgeon, doctor, chiropractor, dentist, lawyer, accountant, engineer, architect, artist, musician, teacher, or agricultural specialist, or other occupation normally conducted from such residence by a person residing on the premises and incidental to such residence. And the reason I read that is, and I have a home occupation here in Somers. The incidental part seems important to me. But something normally conducted from such residence, having philanthropic events is wonderful. And promoting that is wonderful, but it's not something I typically have seen conducted from a residence. Not at this scale. So why am I confused? What's wrong? What am I analyzing wrong?
No, I mean, I think it'd be quite common for them to have people over to their home and incidental to their home. I think that's kind of partially probably what they do now at their residence there. And so I think this is kind of an extension of the actual occupations that they have. It may be unusual at a larger scale, but I think also in bringing on an architect like our firm, I think there's an ambition there to have something that the building will also be a work of art for them. And so I think there's a level of ambition here, which I don't want to hold that against them or against the client, but I think they want it to be an exciting space, both to create art and to practice their philanthropy.
I'm sympathetic to their desire, but also keeping in mind that this is quite a big ask, just in the frontage requirement, which we granted for the main principal residence, but keeping in mind that this is a residential neighborhood, and I don't know that hosting events of the size that this property seems that they're designing for is consistent with the current use of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I can understand your perspective. Absolutely. I think the property is, exceptionally large. It's extremely open. It's also what you don't see on the plans. I think it's very a wooded site. So this building is really nestled into an existing wooded area. So I think given the exceptional scale of the property, I think the building feels actually appropriately sized. But absolutely, I can understand your perspective on the relative scale of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and to me, it feels like an event center, which would be very different than a home occupation in that it would bring larger groups of people on a semi-regular basis to the property, which would be a concern. Just the size of it tells me that it's an event center. It's be a nice place for a corporate retreat. So that's what gives me concern. So why don't we, I think there may be some folks here that from the public that might want to comment. Let's come back to questions from the board after we hear public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
We are a little concerned that there's going to be additional traffic.
Can we get one good page on the board so that Paul can get it on camera?
That one driveway, right? And you need residential neighborhood.
So I'll have you give those comments at the mic, right? So just so that we don't do just protocol, we have to do it that way. But yeah, feel free to.
Oh, it is overwhelming.
You think they need to get a title report?
Yeah, it was a big map. Yeah.
So the lower level is essentially what we was referring to as the basement.
Yeah.
Where are they turning down?
No, it's on a different part of the property. And that is drawn here. I'll show it. Or do you ever want to have sort of like a survey so she can see where it is on the property? Oh, Tommy's not. Tommy's gonna.
This is existing pond. It's not showing the proposed location.
It's in relative by Wood Street on Mosman Avenue.
Yeah, they're just looking for the location of the building. It isn't here. It is, here you go. Got it.
Driveway, the same house, proposed on accessory.
Yeah.
And then, Bart, as you were reading there, it does also refer to the accessory building to it being a primary residence as well. So that might be an issue if they don't intend to live on this property, according to that language as you read it.
Yeah, person residing on the premises and incidental to such residence.
Right.
Artist is something there. I don't know that if these gentlemen intend to live on the property. They're just by a simple Google search, their profiles do not show them to be artists. And I don't think they're making their living selling pottery. So I kind of think that that's what the code anticipated, was that somebody who was going to work from home and stay there. And this was really their residence, and their office is just a home office. And so this feels like something different. And I love the idea of having more philanthropic events in our community and bringing, a high level of people here. But it doesn't feel like this code. The way this is written doesn't feel like this is in it to me.
Okay, so I'm just gonna officially go out for public comment now. Anybody here, or Paul, if you can put the numbers up. Let's just.
Okay.
Just give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Vicki Nightingale. I live at 77 Mosman Avenue, and I am, they have great taste. I love their current house. I am happy that they bought this property and that this property is going to be improved. But I'm concerned that this is something that is it's not residential, and this is a residential area. And we have enough trouble on Mosman Avenue with traffic and cars and speeding. And I don't know where they're going to park for these events with that one little driveway. And that's it. I mean, I know it'll be a beautiful place. And I have an art background. I love art. If their philanthropy went out to our community, it would be great. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody online, Paul? No. So none of the plans. So given that, I believe it was mentioned that there would be events or displays or charity events on the property. And parking was raised as an issue. Has there been consideration given to parking?
There's no proposal to add parking at the site. Actually, we even maintain just the current gravel drive there. And also, I want to clarify when I kind of speaking and how I anticipate, this basically views. I'm not saying that the clients are planning to have these big events or anything on the property either. So I'd like to note that and say, that's not necessarily the plan for the site. It's really going to be a quiet working space to have a few guests probably to see the art. But I don't want it to seem like it's a big, weekly public events happening here.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us probably would have assumed it, whether you said it or not. If they needed a quiet working space, it probably wouldn't be this large. I can't see any other reason to build something of this size, other than with a kitchen, et cetera, other than to entertain in some fashion, whether it be a charity event or otherwise. So based on all of that, I guess I don't know. I don't know that I'll just give you my opinion as one vote, and then other board members feel free to comment. I don't know that with regard to the use and the height / and number of stories, I don't know that I'd be comfortable approving that. Given what we've learned. So I guess, so do the applicants maintain, so the applicants do maintain a home on one of the other adjacent lots?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Is that their primary residence? Because the application address is Manhattan.
I believe they split time between the two locations.
Okay. Does any of the other board members just want to give their general thoughts?
I'm not comfortable going around the word incidental. I think that's the purpose of a home occupation, is to still maintain the residential aspect of it. So I would be more amenable to many of the other variances, but so long as it's basically a residence and they're doing other things there, I'm okay with it. But if it's no longer, if it's bigger than the residence and it's no longer incidental, that's where I'm stuck.
I will say that the applicant has done a superb job about maintaining the house they purchased from the Thurmans and the property they required from the license. Did a superb job of upgrading it, making the whole neighborhood a lot nicer. But I will have to go along with the statements that Bart mentioned a few minutes ago. So that's how I feel at this present time.
Melissa or Paul, you have anything to add?
No, nothing more than I said earlier.
No.
Okay. So just in terms of the applicants, I mean, we can vote on this.
I would recommend you withdraw it and then circle back. But if you want to vote, you're welcome to it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the best process here. So essentially, to take your comments, withdraw the application, then return and address your comments, and hopefully have a more favorable vote. Is that the recommendation?
Wow, that's.
Yes.
I think you're hearing. I think you're hearing that the vote most likely will not be in favor. So you can take that, or you can, if you want to work with making this a different application, maybe it's easier to withdraw. But it's your call.
I mean, because if they're voted on, they're done.
It has to be. So if it's voted on, you can't just bring it back because unless it's substantially different. So if it's not voted on, you can bring it back, even if it's not substantially different.
Right, I understand.
So,
so in that sense,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
You know, and I think that's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of just unknowns here in terms of what really is the intended use.
Yes.
It just doesn't seem to add up. So, I mean, if without some clarification around that or a plan that sort of lined up with that description, yeah, I'm not saying that if you come back with it and you change it a little bit, that necessarily means it would be approved.
But I'm stuck on the word incidental. So, and Tommy's defining that by square footage. So that's my personal thing. I'm not getting rid of that word because I think that leads to a lot of problems. You could have 20,000 square foot places. So as long as our building inspector is defining incidental by square footage, I would say that I'm not approving this unless it's smaller than the house.
I understand.
Me
I appreciate
personally,
that.
I'm just one vote.
Well, I guess in that sense, it probably makes sense to withdraw application at this moment and to review our options, I think, with the feedback the board's given us today.
Okay, and Denise, is that, then they would just submit a new application to you if they decided to do something else?
Correct. Yep.
And
Okay, so is that a final answer, withdrawing item number 6, the application with the 4 variances?
Yes, we'll withdraw it at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The last thing we have to do then is approve the minutes from June 21st. Has everyone received the minutes and had a chance to take a look?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay, we'll just take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
aye.
Any
Thank you.
opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, and Denise, our next meeting will be September 20th. There will be no August meeting, correct?
Correct. And
And
we
I'm-
will, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, and we will continue with the hybrid model?
Yes, we will continue the way we are now until further notice. And it always gives you the option to, be at the townhouse, come in virtually, whatever you want to do. And I think honestly, it could probably benefit us if we have bad weather, et cetera. So that will be what we're doing from now on.
Okay,
All right.
Great.
all right, great. That's all we have for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Robert, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, take care. I'll see you tomorrow, 4:30.